Hey, welcome back. Paul Casper here, and we're going to continue our lesson on the timeline and just take a quick look at a few things we're definitely going to have to learn more about and pay attention to when we're actually working on our animations in Flash. The most basic way to animate in Flash is to use something called keyframe or keyframe-based animation. Now, with this, we've basically got to control our artwork piece by piece, frame by frame, second by second throughout the entire animation. So this process, though it's highly effective, it is also quite time consuming. Flash gives us some more efficient ways that we can actually do our animations, but we do need to get used to manipulating things called frames, keyframes, and those kind of things in order to actually be able to animate no matter which technique we use. So we're going to start with a quick overview here of what a frame is, keyframe is, and all that good stuff. As you look here on my timeline, notice that I've got a little bit of a label here with a little bit of description about what each is. Flash is measured in frames per second to be more precise. So that is, how many of these little squares are going to play on our animation in a given second. Looking down on my timeline, my frames per second is 24. So that means as a user sees my animation, I'm going to be able to see 24 of these frames in 1 second of viewing. Pretty basic stuff. So if I had 48 frames of animation, the viewer would see 2 seconds of animation. So frames are it's just the measurement. Once we start actually animating, we get to work in things called keyframes. Keyframes actually are inside of frames, but they indicate if there's art there or not. If you see a circle with a hollow middle, that means there is no artwork associated with that layer at that moment in time. So for instance, if I click on this blank keyframe, I've got the hollow circle. 5 frames into my animation, this layer does not have any artwork in it. You'll know that you have artwork on your animation at that moment in time when you see a layer with a gray fill keyframe and it's got the black dot in it. Each black dot indicates a new piece of art. So if I turn the visibility onto this filled keyframe, notice that at each moment in time, as I click from keyframe to keyframe, I have a new piece of artwork. So we can have the exact same piece of artwork going frame by frame. So if I wanted to make this funky shape exist a little bit longer, I could make a duplicate of it just by selecting the next keyframe and going Insert, Timeline, Keyframe. That's going to make a new version of the art directly before it. So whatever keyframe you have selected, it's going to make a duplicate of the next one. If you want to incorporate another keyframe of the same piece of artwork, you could always right-click, which I like to do, and you can insert a keyframe to make another duplicate of the one you had selected. Of course, notice when you right-click, you get all kinds of nifty options. I bet you can't guess what insert a blank keyframe does. If you insert one there, we've now got a blank keyframe inserted. To get rid of that blank keyframe, we're going to right-click and we're going to remove the frame. When we remove the frames, we actually get rid of that artwork that exists in time. So I'm going to just select this last one, right-click, remove the frame. Notice how that frame is now gone. I don't have any blank keyframe or filled keyframe indicator. It's removed. That's different than if we right-click and we choose Clear Keyframe. When we clear a keyframe, we're basically just taking that brand new piece of artwork that we did, getting rid of it, and extending how long the current piece of artwork lives. Notice right here, up above the blue box there, now my little black circle here on the keyframe is extended across. There's no line in between. That means that this piece of artwork now gets to live for 2 frames, where all these other ones get to only live for 1 frame. So as we right click and insert frames, we can extend how long a piece of artwork lives. So I just inserted frames by right clicking, and now notice that when I scrub, these pieces of art live for 2, where the unlucky ones at the very beginning only get to live for 1. Again, to remove a frame, right click, remove it. You can copy it, frames and paste frames. So I want to copy this keyframe. Maybe I want to paste it here. I've now got that circle taking over and my pink shape disappeared. I'm going to hit Command Z a couple times to get back because I want to keep my pink shape. And why don't I just go ahead and insert a frame on these first 2 shapes as well to make sure that they all live for the same amount of time so everything is fair and equal. Alright, so as we begin to add more frames to these different existing pieces of artwork, we are then creating things called frame spans. So I'm just going to turn off the layer I was working with there and turn on my frame span layer here. And I'm going to move this piece of artwork up. And notice we've got this black circle at the beginning that indicates a piece of art. And we've got this huge span that's going about 6 frames. And I know it's 6 because when I highlight that last frame, I can look down in the timeline and see the number 6. We got a 6 frame span. If you double click on a frame span, you can select the whole thing. You can actually, when we start to animate, the closer the keyframes are together, like in the first filled keyframe, the faster the animations are actually going to happen. When you've got a long frame span on a piece of artwork, they actually, nothing is moving, it's the same piece of art. In order to create an animation out of that, we've got to actually right click and insert a keyframe after to make a duplicate piece of art, and then make the movement. So if I right click, insert a keyframe, again it makes a duplicate of the one before it, and I've got to sit there and move it little by little. So I'm just going to do this a few times. Right click on the next keyframe, insert keyframe, just do it real quick. Obviously this is definitely Disney quality animation, so hopefully they come a knockin' any day now. And we've got that. So I'm just going to hit the return key, the enter key on my keyboard, and I'm going to do a quick preview. You can also hit the play button, but I want you to notice how, actually I'm going to shut this one back off. I want you to notice how when I hit play, that stars and sits in place for probably, it's going to go pretty quick, but 6 frames, then all of a sudden it starts to move. And I'm just going to set my looping to be just in this area so we can see that. So if you want to make a piece of artwork pause when you're doing your animation, you need to use frame spans. And again, frame spans are just created by right clicking in that frame span anywhere and inserting a frame. That's a big difference than right clicking and inserting a keyframe, because when you insert a keyframe you get a brand new black dot. I just hit Command Z to undo. By inserting a frame, you extend the life of an existing piece of art. So that's a very critical differentiation between the two. Also notice when we do frame spans, we can actually make our artwork live. Let's shut all these layers off. Boop. Keep that one on. And we can have nothing there. Then we can decide to put artwork in there to show up. We can do whatever we want with the artwork. Again, a frame span, so this one piece of art exists this whole frame span. And then it turns blank again. So we can make stuff show up if we want to by using a combination of blank keyframes and keyframes as well. One last thing I want to show you when it comes to manipulating frames and keyframes are just a few of the quick ways we can do it. Now I've actually right-clicked to insert a blank keyframe, or to right-click and insert a keyframe, but when I do that it's going to be blank because I made a copy of the first one. So maybe I'll just go right here, insert a keyframe as well. Pushed it over one. Again, we can also go to the Insert, Timeline, Frame, Keyframe, and Blank Keyframe to extend, make new art, or put a space in there. One thing when I'm doing keyframe animation that I actually do a lot of is I actually hold down the Option key. So just like in Illustrator, when you grab a piece of artwork, you hold down the Option key and you click and drag it. Maybe I'll do that to my piece of art. Right down here, I'm just going to make another circle. Held down the Option key when I clicked and dragged it, make a duplicate. You can do the same thing when it comes to keyframing. So if I want to take this shape, for instance, and instead of right-clicking, inserting a keyframe and starting over that way, I can actually hold down the Option key and click and drag to bring a duplicate of that previous keyframe over. So then I can move it, Option drag, move it, Option drag, move it, Option drag, move it, so on and so forth. So that's going to give me a good base to start with my animation. You can also double click any frame span, hold down the Option key and drag that over as well. Something kind of fun that we're actually going to get into when we do something a little more advanced called motion tweening is when you right click, we've got, alright, so I got to select multiple frames here. Oh, this is a good point. If you want to select multiple frames, just like to select multiple objects on your stage, you can hold the Shift key to select multiple objects. Same thing again up with keyframes. If you select one, hold down Shift, you can select the whole span of them. Then if I want to hold on the Option key again and click and drag to make a duplicate of all those, I can do that. So I'll turn the visibility on. So now I've got my animation, and then back to my animation. So you can do a lot of manipulating with frames and keyframes. It's figuring out the combination of frame spans, movements of your keyframe animation to make your real animations happen.